Suraj Uttamchandani. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm a doctoral candidate at Indiana University.
I'm Barbara Dennis. I use she, her, hers, and I'm a professor at Indiana University in the Inquiry Methodology program.
I came to Chroma slightly differently than Barbara did, I think, but the Chroma Youth have been doing this for many years, had kind of realized that the circumstances and their experiences in schools were far from satisfactory, and that there was a lack of understanding of how LGBTQ plus youth's lived experiences actually played out. And the youth generated this kind of movement where they would start teaching teachers about how to really work closely with LGBTQ plus students to provide better, safer, more effective, more nourishing schooling experiences. So about 4 years ago, I joined Chroma as a volunteer because I thought it was a really compelling space. And I've been with them ever since.
I was working with some undergrads at IU on something called Project Homecoming. And we had a lot of undergrads in this space who didn't want to go back to their own schools because it was still too risky. They had siblings in the schools and not all their family members knew they were out. But they kind of coalesced around the idea of talking as allies to a school district. And so we went to the local school district, and none of the actual high schools would let us meet with teachers or anything. It was really devastating. Wouldn't return the calls or emails. And so I had a school board member who was really had some passion and some concern for creating schools that were affirming for LGBTQ plus kids. And that school board member put me in touch with somebody in the administrative level of the district, and that person arranged for this group of undergrads to have a panel with school administrators and counselors. So Chroma then was just developing, and so I started meeting with the youth right before they ever did their first training, kind of in conjunction with organizing with the school. And so we had a meeting with the school board and with actually not with all the school board, but some school board members and the local superintendent. We set up the first really big training. And at that training, I was involved in the preparation work, but also in just documenting the experiences of teachers, kind of collecting data, if you will, around questions that were asked and what kinds of experiences teachers had. So that was sort of my entree in. And I've been a volunteer playing kind of the role of sort of research outlook person, like where do we have opportunities to do research? How can we build that? Other people have come to the group and wanted to do research, and I'm kind of usually involved in those discussions as well. So that's sort of my, I guess, integration with Chroma.
This is a distinction that the youth were starting to make in their trainings, and I think they had read a little bit about this. We're not the only people to make this distinction, and so I think that they had read about this. But what is really powerful, I think, for all of us about that distinction is that allyship is important and good, and we certainly support it, but it's not necessarily sustainable, and it really focuses on individual kinds of interactions. But there is a ceiling on how much one individual can solve system-wide problems such as access to bathrooms. And the accomplice or advocate way of thinking really prioritizes cultural shifts and systemic change, and it's a way that individual allies can kind of build towards something that persists even after individuals move on. The other piece of the accomplice or advocate distinction is that we really see the accomplice or the advocate as working really closely with the youth that are particularly in a particular context, because we really understand that the people most affected by decisions in policymaking are the people who should be most represented in the process of making those policies.
I think also at the beginning there was this when Chroma was first getting organized. A lot of them had been involved in GSAs at the school, and there was a sense that allyship. There was some allyship going on at the schools, but that did not seem sufficient to the task of making the schools an affirming place. And so I think even from the beginning, without having thought thoroughly through the distinction, they were already experiencing that allyship wasn't enough. Was a good start, but it wasn't solving the problem. And even having to create an organization outside the school, because the schools are so limited in the way youth can advocate for themselves. And so I think this idea of letting the youth lead, we were really able to do that better, more effectively outside the school than inside the school.
I think we agree that really the central takeaway is that being an ally is good and important. But if you are a person in an actual school working with actual youth, you need to be an advocate that supports cultural shifts and larger cultural change.